Instead of embracing this achievement in supporting absolute inclusion within a democracy, Efems disguised as virtuous feminists blame men when elections don't go their way. Inclusion in democracy was the goal, voting was the responsibility, a democratic outcome was what we're all held to account. But tantrums and self-entitlement are how fourth-wave feminism responds to it. The persistent pattern of left-wing Efems resorting to violence and chaos when democratic processes take place goes against all that has been achieved in supporting both feminism and democracy. Through the power of democratic processes that have advanced Western civilizations to which many nations aspire, feminism itself gained significantly, flourishing globally through the inclusive power of democratic systems. Feminists throughout the West who turned their back on democracy when Clinton lost were concurrently turning their back on everything that had been achieved in the first waves of feminism. When women couldn't vote, it was men's fault. Now that women can vote, it's still men's fault despite the reality that there are more women than men, the gender-neutral fact that everyone gets one vote, and in America at least, tens upon tens of millions of women didn't even bother to turn up to vote at all. Even in the practice of true fairness through the inclusive and democratic system of voting, white men are still to be held to account for elections that hurt the Efems' feelings. Delinking the democratic outcomes that don't fit the Efems' agenda conforms to her belief that accountability is something for men to deal with, irrespective of the absurdity that comes with it. Within the distorted confines of fourth-wave feminist intonation, democratic results earned through the right to vote are not relevant anymore. Feelings and violent tantrums are now the focus of fourth-wave feminism under her new agenda. 1. Recruitment. Second and third-wave feminism pushed for greater equality in the workplace. So-called experts of women's and gender studies, dominated by leftist Efems, professed that men were biased during the recruitment process by advancing men ahead of women based on a name on an application or resume. Feminists argued that beyond the already established affirmative action, positive discrimination programs already in place, men should be reduced or removed from the recruiting process entirely to ensure a fairer opportunity for women. These experts also assumed that removing gender from the applicant's resume would improve women's workplace participation due to men's bias to not employ women. To improve female participation rates in the Australian public service apps, the fourth-wave feminists argued that men were both responsible and accountable for the alleged gender imbalance because they discriminated against women and all other minorities. The Australian government took the left's bait and subsequently implemented the recommendations across the Australian public service, but not without gaining data through blind trials. Those trials proved the complete opposite to what the leftist Efem experts of women's and gender studies professed. Summary of trial, Ref. H. Below, ABC News, June 2017. Professor Michael Hiscox, a Harvard academic who oversaw the trial, said he was shocked by the results and has urged caution. We anticipated this would have a positive impact on diversity, making it more likely that female candidates and those from ethnic minorities are selected for the shortlist, he said. We found the opposite, that identifying candidates reduced the likelihood of women being selected for the shortlist. The trial found assigning a male name to a candidate made them 3.2% less likely to get a job interview. Adding a woman's name to a CV made the candidate 2.9% more likely to get a foot in the door. We should hit pause and be very cautious about introducing this as a way of improving diversity, as it can have the opposite effect, Professor Hiscox said. Further to proving men are more likely to not be employed because of their gender, the study also showed women were less likely to hire women over men, whilst men were more likely to hire women over men. Or in the language of an Efem, it proved that men are oppressed by women, and women are the oppressors of everyone, including women. Commencing in first wave, but culminating in the second and third waves, feminists demanded greater workplace powers for women to ensure more women could participate in the workplace. The feminists' goal once met was neither treated responsibly nor acknowledged when it went wrong. To this day, the report, funded by the Commonwealth of Australia and commissioned by the Prime Minister himself, has been completely ignored by the left-wing media and suppressed as pesky data that compromises the Efem's agenda of entitlement through self-oppression. Even when women were fast-tracked and afforded every opportunity to prove this unfounded belief, accurate data determined that a higher percentage of women hold a more significant gender bias than men, including against other women. Yet, it's still men who are held to account for women's preference to employ white men, while women themselves discriminate against other women and minorities, all the while hypocritically projecting sexism and racism onto the men who are striving to include everyone. If feminism really were about inclusion, this study, called Going Blind to See More Clearly, 2017, would be a mandatory component of every women's and gender studies globally. However, because the trial undoes the core misandry argument of fourth-wave feminism, it's destined to be suppressed, hence the reason I share it with you now. Results of trial, ref extract, Commonwealth of Australia, Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, Going Blind to See More Clearly, 2017. Overall, male reviewers displayed markedly more discrimination in favor of minority candidates than did female reviewers. Male reviewers were 11.6% more likely to shortlist minority men and 13.6% more likely to shortlist minority females, while female reviewers were only 1.84% more likely to shortlist minority men and 5.5% more likely to shortlist minority females, compared to the identified condition. APP staff aged 40 plus displayed much stronger affirmative action in favor of female minorities than did staff under the age of 40. These reviewers were 10.0% more likely to shortlist minority females, while younger reviewers were only 5.8% more likely to shortlist female minorities, compared to the identified condition. APP staff working in human resources roles apply strong affirmative action in favor of both females and minorities. They were 9.0% more likely to shortlist females and 41.4% more likely to shortlist female minorities, compared to the identified condition. There was considerable variation in behavior across agencies. For example, reviewers in some agencies appeared not to favor female or minority candidates to any significant extent. The agency displaying the strongest affirmative action for minority men was 55.4% more likely to shortlist minority men on average, when they could be identified, compared with when the candidates were identified. The results from this trial demonstrate that, on the whole, public servants engaged in positive discrimination towards female and minority candidates. Their identification of CVS in such a context has the effect of decreasing the number of female and minority candidates shortlisted for executive-level APS positions. 2. Employment. Expanding on workplace participation, third-wave feminism demanded Western governments set and met female quotas in high-paying and prestigious fields. Feminists argued that men held most, if not all, the high-paying jobs. This was used to prove the feminists' argument of systemic sexism, and thus, the government had a moral and legal responsibility to fix it. Fourth-wave feminism introduced the new theory and accompanying demand of equality of outcome over equality of opportunity. Western governments globally accepted the feminists' latest theory, and consequently, many positive discrimination initiatives were implemented to fast-track women into high-paying positions. In turn, quotas for women were set throughout government departments at all levels, but primarily for executive and high-paying administrative positions. Ironically, there were absolutely no quotas set for women to fill positions within the dirty, uncomfortable, or dangerous employment fields dominated by men, as there was little interest in that type of work. Questionably, fourth-wave feminism aimed for gender equality in the more glamorous white-collar jobs, while completely overlooking blue-collared laborious work, even when that work paid well. Focusing entirely on gender alone, before the next evolution of the Efem's demand for LGBTQI, Black, Islamic, disabled, transgender and anyone who is not a straight white man, quotas, Legislation was passed to ensure women were fast-tracked through the recruitment doors and up the corporate ladder irrespective of her qualification, education, experience or relative male competition. Any private entity that failed to meet these quotas risked public persecution and even civil or criminal lawsuits. Concurrently, any government executive who did not achieve the new gender targets would face catastrophic repercussions to their career. The push for equality through outcome quotas then expanded to rewards and accolades to ensure women were viewed, treated and hence recognised equally to men. Within Australia, the annual Australian Day ceremonies that previously celebrated the achievements of remarkable Australians was used as a vehicle to meet these quotas. In doing so, male nominees were brushed aside to meet the Efems that verified women were as good, if not better than men. This, in turn, evolved into even more one-sided gender quotas in art, music and other creative fields. Just as targets were applied to executive employment, then the Australia Day Honour Roll, fourth-wave feminists demanded quotas set in the arts. No longer was art, music, film or design to be judged or glorified on its genderless content, message, or influence. Rather, the Efem insisted that quotas were put in place to prove that women were more creative and artistic than men. Under the mantra of equality in outcome over opportunity, nothing was open to the truth, logic, reason or reality of free markets or even free thought. Instead, everything except the dirty, dangerous, uncomfortable or female-dominated fields had to have one-sided quotas to advance women in the name of feminism, which claimed to be about both genders. With quotas expanding to everyone who was not a straight white male, governments were led to believe that workplace diversity and fairness could only be achieved through positive discrimination, albeit discrimination nonetheless. With these positive discrimination policies in place for years, combined with female-dominated university enrollments, women's participation rates soared, and as of 2016, women made up 58% of the apps workforce. Australian Public Service Commission, Gender in the Apps, 2018. More than a decade after they were first introduced, and female-biased positive discrimination campaigns continue pushing the new imbalance continually higher. While fourth-wave feminism insincerely claimed the goal was 50%, reality and mathematical fact shows there is no sign of stopping or even slowing what was once intended to be fair and inclusive policy. So, after all that had been achieved in getting women into the workplace through second and third-wave feminism's demands, we now see the modification in her fourth-wave intonation. Under fourth-wave feminism, the Efem changed her protests to hypocritically and ungratefully highlight the fact she has to accept the never-before-considered realities of high-paying jobs, and the actual work and long hours that come with such positions. Though she claimed, if not demanded, the responsibility to work at the top and subsequently receive the top wage that came with it, she now refuses to accept the accountability that comes with the positions. In a woeful and gut-wrenching display of the importance of women's role in the workplace, the Efem attempted to show us her irreplaceable significance by choosing to not work while still demanding full payment. The women's strike, titled "A Day Without a Woman," is an annual event introduced through the fourth-wave feminist movement. Organizers from the ideology describe the purpose of the event to women globally. Ref. A Day Without a Woman homepage. The goal is to highlight the economic power and significance that women have in the US and global economies, while calling attention to the economic injustices women and gender non-conforming people continue to face. We play an indispensable role in the daily functions of life and in all of society, through paid and unpaid, seen and unseen labor. We must have the power to control our bodies and be free from gender norms, expectations and stereotypes. We must free ourselves and our society from the constant awarding of power, agency and resources disproportionately to masculinity. We must end the hiring discrimination that women, particularly mothers, women of color, women with disabilities, indigenous women, lesbian, queers and trans women still face each day in our nation. We believe that creating workforce opportunities that reduce discrimination against women and mothers allow economies to thrive. nations and industries that support and invest in caregiving and basic workplace protections including benefits like paid family leave, access to affordable childcare, sick days, health care, fair pay, vacation time, and healthy work environments have shown growth and increased capacity. Fourth-wave feminists encouraged women globally to take the day off to gain recognition for the fact that they are in fact adults with jobs. Like the insecure partner performing emotional blackmail by pretending to walk out. The effect of proving how valuable you are at work by not turning up does little to support your argument or increase your value. Demanding recognition for something that men have done forever does little to support the demand to provide power or prove the equal ability of women. Moreover, taking the day off to demand more money and time off, while someone makes childcare cheap for your choices, was certainly not what iconic feminist Rosie the Riveter was talking about in second-wave feminism. What was once an earned right, honest work for honest money, is now an indisputable entitlement, give me more money for less work. What was a standard and equal responsibility for men, is now an unfair sexist system that must provide women with more money for less work. The arrogance of the organizers not only disrupts workplaces globally for no value, but also provides a pre-drafted letter for women to give to their employers to provide a day off with pay to one gender, to prove the equality of all genders. Western women who choose to participate in the strike epitomize the self-righteous prerogative of fourth-wave feminism that is void from the veracities of life, including the realities of employment. The following is a copy of the letter written for female employees to pass to their employers. Note the attitude of entitlement. It doesn't ask for permission. It tells the employer the female employee won't be at work because she's a woman, proving she's equal. Ref. Draft letter from organizers of A Day Without Women. Dear, insert name of supervisor. I am writing to inform you that in honor of International Women's Day, I will not be working on Wednesday, March the 8th, as part of the Women's March as A Day Without a Woman. The Women's March organized this day in the same spirit of love and liberation that inspired the march on January the 21st, 2017. A Day Without a Woman is a recognition of the enormous value that women of all backgrounds add to our socio-economic system and the pervasive and systemic gender-based inequalities that still exist within our society, from the wage gap to vulnerability to discrimination, sexual harassment and job security. I hope you will stand in support of me, and any of my women colleagues who choose to participate, in observance of this day. Places of employment can participate by closing for the day or giving women workers the day off, whether paid or unpaid. The goal of the first waves of feminism was to ensure women could work under the same conditions as men under equal opportunity. Then it moved to promotions based on gender over ability and commitment camouflaged under the banner of equality in outcome. Then it moved to the same work with different conditions disguised under the banner of flexible work arrangements. Then it went to pay women more to match men who actually more disguised under the banner of the gender wage gap. And then it moved to a demand to pay women who refuse to turn up for the day to prove they are more important than men under the banner of A Day Without a Woman. Consistent with everything that is fourth-wave feminism, the Efem will never ever be satisfied. What should be embraced as an opportunity for women to celebrate the choice to study and work anywhere they like is now about men being held to account because it's hard work doing those high-paying jobs.